dear students. Today we shall continue with our topic of obesity and malnutrition. Basically, malnutrition is of two types, that is undernutrition or overnutrition. Undernutrition topic we had discussed in detail in our previous class. Today we shall be discussing overnutrition, that is also called obesity. It's the most prevalent nutritional disorder in developed countries. All over the world, obesity is much more prevalent in rich population. In obesity, excess of fat is accumulated. This is due to excess energy intake in comparison with decreased energy expenditure. The obesity index, which is nowadays called body mass index, it is calculated by taking weight in kg and it is divided by the square of height in meters. So, for calculation of body mass index of a person, we need to know his or her weight in kg as well as we shall measure height in meters. A person is said to be obese when body mass index exceeds 27.8 kg per square meter in males, and in females, if the BMI value exceeds 27.3 kg per square meter, then she is said to be obese. That is when the body weight is excess of 120% of the desirable body weight. Obesity can occur only as a result of when there will be excess of food ingestion in excess of the body's needs. So excess calorie consumption as compared to calorie requirement. This will lead to obesity. Then what is the harms of obesity? First of all, it increases the risk of various metabolic diseases. Then it causes insulin resistance. This insulin resistance leads to increased plasma levels of insulin. Then due to insulin resistance, obesity causes type 2 diabetes mellitus. Then obesity is associated with deranged lipid profile, that is increased LDL, increased bad cholesterol and decreased HDL, decreased good cholesterol. Due to this deranged lipid profile, there is increased risk of atherosclerosis, which leads to coronary artery disease and heart attack. There is risk of increased blood pressure. There can be cardiovascular complications due to blockage of coronary artery, and finally all these complications can cause premature death in an obese person. Then obesity can be of two types. The more harmful is central obesity. This central obesity can be android or apple shaped, that is abdominal obesity in males, or it can be gynecoid obesity, which is more commonly found in females. The fat is deposited around breasts, hips and thighs. Obesity occurs when there is excess food intake as compared to the body's needs. The early consequences of obesity involve metabolic changes which have been grouped together to be coined as one term, that is metabolic syndrome. The progression from obesity to metabolic dysfunction and finally leading to insulin resistance type 2 diabetes soon occurs if timely interventions are not taken. However, the real danger in obesity, in uncontrolled obesity, lies on the development of cardiovascular disease due to deranged lipid profile with increased LDL cholesterol leading to atherosclerosis. Now we come to the important term metabolic syndrome. The important components of metabolic syndrome are, first of all, glucose intolerance, that is the fasting plasma glucose is more than 100 mg per deciliter. Normal should be 70 to 110 mg per deciliter. Then second component is insulin resistance leading to type 2 diabetes. Then third component is central obesity or abdominal obesity, that is If waist circumference in males is more than 90 centimeter and in females it is more than 80 centimeter, then fourth component is deranged lipid profile and increased levels of triglycerides, which should be more than 150 to be labeled as metabolic syndrome. Normal TG's level in plasma is 80 to 150 mg/cent. This deranged lipid profile is said to be there when HDL cholesterol is less than 40 mg/cent in males or less than 50 mg/cent in females. You all know the desirable level of HDL cholesterol in males should be more than 40 mg/cent and in females should be more than 50 mg/cent. When the HDL cholesterol level decrease, there is deranged lipid profile. Then the next component of metabolic syndrome is hypertension. That is, if systolic BP is more than 130 or diastolic BP is more than 85 mmHg. Next, we come to detail visceral obesity. The visceral adiposity is an independent predictor leading to insulin sensitivity, impaired glucose tolerance, elevated blood pressure, and dyslipidemia. The visceral fat is associated with increased production of many inflammatory markers, which include tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 6, and CRP. On the other hand, more of the visceral fat produces less of the adiponectin. Adiponectin is a satiety hormone. It decreases the appetite. That is, if larger the size of adipocytes, less will be the production of adiponectin, and secondly, more the fat deposits, higher will be the production of inflammatory markers, leading to injury to the vascular endothelium, promoting atherosclerosis in obese persons. Then, leptin resistance in obesity. In a normal person, leptin regulates long-term energy balance. Leptin causes long-term inhibition of appetite in response to formation of body fat. So the normal action of leptin is, if there is enough accumulation of body fat, it will inhibit appetite. This mechanism is disrupted in obesity. So even though leptin levels in obese persons are elevated due to higher fat deposit, but it does not result in reduction of appetite due to resistance to leptin. So there will be continuous increased calorie intake despite adequate fat deposits. Now, what is the treatment of obesity? The most suitable remedy for obesity is lifestyle modification. The basic goal is to reduce the intake of calories and particularly fat. Frequent small meals with lot of vegetables and fruits will make the food palatable and also will give a satiety. Controlled exercise is very useful along with diet. Important regulators of appetite are: hypothalamus has the central control of appetite. Then many psychological factors, genetic factors, neural and humoral factors are also involved. The polypeptides which increase appetite are insulin and cortisol, neuropeptide Y, ghrelin, and polypeptide YY. And on other hand, the appetite decreasing factors are leptin, melanocyte stimulating hormone, and serotonin. That is why we must have seen certain depressed persons, they keep on eating despite even with adequate fat deposits. Their appetite is not in control because in depression, serotonin level is lowered. So the appetite is not depressed. The person cannot feel that his desire for food is fulfilled and he or she keeps on eating. So, role of leptin. leptin is a hormone secreted by adipocytes. It's mainly produced by white adipose tissue. It functions as satiety signal, that is, when fat deposits are adequate, it suppresses appetite. It's an index of energy reserve or fat depots in our body. When the energy reserve is adequate, leptin levels are increased, and this would further suppress food intake by reducing obesity. This leptin inhibits the secretion of neuropeptide Y. This neuropeptide Y will otherwise increase appetite. And hence, when fat deposits are full, appetite is decreased. In case of obesity, there happens resistance to leptin. So, high levels of leptin is found in circulation. Normally, there is adipo-insular axis. That is, insulin promotes the secretion of leptin in well-fed state. In well-fed state, plasma glucose level increases, to which in response, insulin level increases. This insulin in well-fed state will promote leptin secretion in a normal person, and this leptin secretion will then decrease appetite and will promote the feeling of satiety. But in obese persons, there is disruption of this adipo-insular axis. So, despite reaching adequate blood glucose level and achieving adequate insulin level, the insulin does not promote leptin secretion. The second is the role of neuropeptide Y, which is a hypothalamic polypeptide, and it stimulates the desire for carbohydrates. Its action is to inhibit insulin secretion. Then third is ghrelin. It is secreted again mainly by the adipocytes. It stimulates hunger and appetite by acting on hypothalamus. Plasma levels of ghrelin is increased in fasting state, which produces hunger signals. Then fourth factor is non-esterified fatty acids, which are released from adipose tissue during fasting. The circulating non-esterified fatty acids, they reduce blood glucose uptake. This promotes lipid burning as a fuel source in most of the tissues. So it promotes sparing of carbohydrates so that glucose and other carbohydrates can be now used by neurons. Next, very interesting topic is prescription of diet according to the calorie requirement and other requirements for different classes of population. For prescription of diet, we must know basic steps. First step is how to calculate the net calorie requirement for a particular person. Then we must know the required proximate principles. The proximate principles means apart from the calorie requirement met by carbohydrates, fats and proteins, we must know the requirement for the major macro minerals like calcium, iron and proteins so that to achieve adequate growth, tissue repair and damage. Then third step is we must know the general composition of common items for that person, whether he or she is vegetarian or non-vegetarian. So in a vegetarian or non-vegetarian diet, we must know the general composition of common food items. Then the fourth step is determine the food items and their amount to be taken. And the last fifth step is to prescribe quantity of different food items as per the schedule of 3 meals per day. First of all, step first is how to calculate energy requirements of a normal person. While calculating the energy requirements, we have to consider the energy required for the most important for maintenance of basal metabolic rate. Second, specific dynamic action, that is thermogenic effect of food for maintenance of body temperature. Then third, extra energy expenditure for physical activities according to the different classes of persons, whether he or she is a sedentary worker with mild physical activity, moderate or heavy physical activity. Accordingly, we shall add an additional energy expenditure. So here is the sample. For a 55 kg reference person doing moderate work, how will we calculate the energy requirement? First of all, for basal metabolic rate, it is 24 kilocalorie per kg. So 24 by 55 kg, it is 1320 kilocalorie. Then second is for moderate activity, it is 40% of basal metabolic rate. So we calculated it is 528. Then totaling of these two will make up 1848 kilocalorie. Then we need to calculate energy required for maintenance of body temperature, that is specific dynamic action. It is 10% of the subtotal of these above two, that is BMR and the energy required for physical activity. So additional acting is 185 and totaling of all these three, that is energy required for maintenance of BMR, for physical activity, and thirdly energy needed for specific dynamic action, makes up the total energy requirement for a particular person. We revise. For energy requirement calculation, first of all, we need to calculate energy requirement for maintenance of basal metabolic rate, which is calculated as 24 kilocalorie per kg. Then secondly, according to the physical activity engaged, for example, for moderate activity, we need energy 40% of BMR, which amounts to this much in this particular person. Then we add up these two for BMR and for physical activity. This is the amount. Then we add the energy required for maintenance of body temperature, that is specific dynamic action. This is 10% of the total of these two above. Then finally, this is the need for specific dynamic action. We calculate the above three, and finally we make up the net calorie requirement in a particular person. So we continue with the first step in prescription of diet. Energy requirement plus specific dynamic action. It was rounded off to around 2000 kilocalorie. Then we come to the proximate principles. As we discussed, every person needs a basic quantity of proteins for repair of damaged tissues and for growth. The protein requirement for this 55 kg reference person, adult person, is around 60 gram, calcium 400 milligram and iron 25 milligram. Then, once we have calculated the total calorie requirement, this calorie requirement has to be splitted into how much calorie has to be fulfilled by proteins, fats and carbohydrates. Calorie requirement was 2000 kilocalorie. Then proteins we had calculated, it was 60 gram. The major chunk of these calories should be met by carbohydrates, that is 350 into 4, and some calories should be accounted by fats. Then calcium 400 milligram and iron 25 milligram. Next, third step was we must know the common food items taken by the vegetarian person or the non-vegetarian person. First, we come to the diet in a vegetarian person. As we see, the cereals which are rich in mainly carbohydrates and proteins, 350 gram, pulses rich in proteins, 75 gram, vegetable oil mainly rich in fats, 40 ml, milk rich in carbohydrates, fats and proteins, as well as calcium 250 ml, then green leafy vegetables, mainly providing roughage 200 gram, and sugar providing carbohydrates 25 gram. And since this is for vegetarian diet, the last column, none. Then in case of non-vegetarians, as we see, the same amount of cereals and same amount of cereals is taken, the amount of pulses and vegetable oil, milk, they have decreased because the need for proteins and fats, they can be met by the non-veg item we have added in last, that is, it can be fish, meat. The amount of leafy vegetable is same, again 200 gram, because the roughage requirement will be met mainly by these green leafy vegetables. So, in short, the requirement of proteins, requirement of proteins, fats have been cut off by taking them from fish and meat. So, requirement for pulses, vegetable oil and milk has decreased. Important points for prescribing a diet. First of all, it should be a balanced, well-planned diet, and this should contain all the essential nutrients. Secondly, the prescribed diet should be simple, it should be locally available, easily affordable, palatable. Palatable means its taste should be acceptable, and the diet should be easily digestible. The diet should have variety, and the diet should not differ very much from the habitual diet of the person. Then calorie intake should be correct, and it should be balanced according to the energy expenditure of the person. So more the physical activity, more carbs and fats we shall prescribe in diet. Then special care should be taken to see that adequate quantity of calcium and iron are obtained from the diet, particularly for growing children, pregnant and lactating mothers. A very important fact here is that absorption of the minerals, particularly iron and calcium, is reduced by certain other factors in Indian diet. Then, adequate protein content with all the essential amino acids should be supplied. This is achieved by cereal pulse mixture with additional animal proteins if necessary. In the previous class, we discussed about the limiting amino acids. That is, for example, cereal proteins, they are deficient in lysine, whereas pulse proteins, they are deficient in methionine. So, lysine, it will be the limiting amino acid for cereals, while methionine will be the limiting amino acid for pulses. If we are giving a person cereal pulse mixture, this will account for supplementation of the limiting amino acids in each other. That is why we prescribe cereal pulse mixture for a vegetarian person. And lastly, the diet should provide adequate roughage. Then, next topic is glycemic index. Glycemic index of a particular food item is basically how much blood glucose level is raised after taking a particular food item as compared to the standard, that is 50 gram glucose. For example, after intake of table sugar, that is sucrose, our blood glucose level will rise to a higher level as compared to a high roughage diet like green leafy vegetables. So, sucrose will be said to have higher glycemic index as compared to green leafy vegetables. This glycemic index is assessed by the glucose tolerance test by comparing it with a reference meal, that is 50 gram glucose. It is calculated as incremental area under glucose tolerance curve after 50 gram of a particular test meal divided by incremental area under curve after 50 gram of the reference meal, that is 50 gram glucose into 100. So glycemic index is expressed as percentage. As a general rule, glycemic index of carbohydrate will be lowered if it is combined with proteins, fat or fiber, because these three will lower down the absorption of dietary carbohydrates. So this is the illustration of glycemic index curve. Here the black curve shows the glycemic index curve of a test meal, and here the red curve shows glycemic index of the reference meal, that is 50 gram glucose. In this curve we can see very clearly that after 1 hour of taking the test meal, the increase in blood glucose was only 125 in case of test meal, while in case of reference meal it was around 165. So test meal is said to have much lower glycemic index as compared to the reference meal. For this is knowledge of this glycemic index is important, because for diabetic persons we shall prescribe foods with lower glycemic index. That is, we shall advise to include items with higher roughage like green leafy vegetables and less of carbohydrates. Thank you so much.